Technology continues to reshape our ranching industry, and today we're going to take a look at two very different technologies that share, though, one common goal, and that is helping ranchers operate more efficiently and more profitably.
Our average cow-calf producer has between 5 and 15% of their herd that eat for 2 to 3 and wean for 1. Those cows never make sense.
So what if the next breakthrough in cow efficiency isn't genetics, but data? Today, Shane White with Cirrus Tags explains how wearable technology is helping producers measure feed efficiency, fertility, grazing behavior, and much more. Then we'll shift gears just a bit, but stay with the theme of technology and ranching as Gabe White with Herd Advisor joins us to address what may be the biggest challenge in herd management software, and that's simply just getting the data entered in the first place.
Records in and of themselves are not sexy and not fun at all. It is the ability to now either understand what's happening on the ground or make decisions in a little bit more of a proactive way.
Because at the end of the day, records aren't about keeping records. They're about making better decisions. Decisions on marketing, culling, breeding, and ultimately profitability. Today, we look at a couple of technologies shaping our industry on this episode of the Working Ranch Radio Show. Well, I know I can't be the only one that is interested or would like to know more information about some of the newer technology that we're hearing about in our ranching industry. So today you have the benefit or the opportunity to tag along with me as I get some of my questions answered. As you heard there in the opening, Shane White with Cirrus Tags will be joining us, and we'll also hear from Gabe White, who is the founder of Herd Advisor. So a couple different technologies to learn a little bit more about today. I hope you will stick around and enjoy the show. Of course, later on in the program, we'll hear from meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-range weather. Hey, for those of you that are subscribers to Working Ranch Magazine, I bet you already have the latest issue of Working Ranch Magazine delivered there into your mailbox. And for those of you that are not, you can start your subscription today by going to workingranchmag.com and get things started there. Or you can also stop by your local tractor supply store and pick one right there off the shelf. Not only do they have the latest issue, but they probably have some back issues as well that you can pick up. And a shout out here today to the Tractor Supply Store in Cheyenne, Wyoming, in Clarion, Pennsylvania, in Clay Center, Kansas, and in Clinton, Arkansas. Hey, by the way, if you do have to step away from the radio for some unforeseen reason, you can catch all of our shows by going to workingranchradio.com or your favorite podcast provider. You can just search Working Ranch Radio Show and you will find us there. Click subscribe as well so you catch all of the new shows as they come down. Now, I want to remind you, next week we're going to take the week off, so it's a good week for you to get, if you're in the tractor hand, to go back and listen to some great shows that we've previously had. Maybe need to get caught up on that. So we're going to take next week off. We'll be back the week after that with a new show looking at a lot of great topics. One of those that I know is a big hot topic in our industry right now is, what do you think about data centers? We're going to try to find a third-party guest that can kind of give us the pros and cons on all of that and how we can look at that, and basically want to leave it up to you to make your own decision on that. Well, let's jump into our program here today, and joining us on the show is Shane White. He is the National Sales Manager for Cirrus Tags. And Shane, good to have you here today on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Yes, sir, Justin. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
No question. When you and I met last time, we were at the Cattlemen's Convention in Nashville, Tennessee, and the interest in wearable technology that we're seeing in our industry continues to evolve even more and more. And I think one of the things that we look at this is, what are we able to pull from that data to help us from a management standpoint? With your guys' Gen 6, it's not just with the wearable, the fact that we're tracking and we can see where their animal is, but it's beyond that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's giving you feed efficiency on animals, allowing you to see their intake and measure it against their economically relevant output production. How many pounds of wean calf does a cow produce per pound of forage intake? That's a holy grail answer to how efficient are our cows. And simultaneously, you're going to be getting estrus alerts, calving alerts, things that are truly essential to our bottom line. But you also can go find the science of how they're verified, because at the end of the day, you shouldn't believe a system that does internal verification. You should be counting on the great scientists doing great work around the world to be giving you published manuscripts and papers on how these things are calculated. because this is all really hard science and we need to be using great minds to generate it.
Well, Shane, as you were saying that answer, that's exactly where my mind was going is I can't just take your word for this. I mean, we need to know from a rancher standpoint, how are you putting this together so that you really can do that, that heat detection, feed efficiency value, the nutrition, the welfare of these animals? A lot of people can make claims on that, but how are you justifying that? How do you back that up?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the beauty of how this platform is set up is that we have a research partner that works with universities around the world to allow them to have open source data at their fingertips on down to the second movements of animals and their efficiencies. So when the intake, as a great example, is calculated, that's based upon a research device that captures GPS every second. It does behavior analytics every 5 seconds, and it's building a model that allows a researcher to take open raw data and validate whatever they're wanting to do. So like in the estrus example is a perfect one to talk about. Those animals were monitored via cameras for 6 months straight, 5 natural cycles and 1 synchronized cycle. And every time there was a validated standing heat moment, then they went back and looked at the behavior data to see, could the behavior predict the science, not the science predict the behavior. That's an important piece of it, is that the science has to be the backbone and the behavior has to be the piece that we try to predict based upon it. So if you use that as a validation, then you're going to research parties like Colorado State or University of Wyoming or Texas Tech, Texas A&M, Oklahoma State, one of our dozens of partners around the nation who's doing this very kind of research and validating it for you as the producer. It means that you're trusting their science and their expertise on a platform that allows great science to exist as algorithms.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have the data, we have the concept of the data and how that's being found out and how that's being verified in that. I think one of the things in our industry too, we've got a multitude of ways you put 10 producers in a room and there's going to be 10 different ways they're wanting to utilize data across different platforms. Maybe they're a purebred outfit. Maybe they're a stocker deal or something like that, or retaining ownership of animals. So the ability to use that data across multiple platforms, explain that process.
Yeah, absolutely. It just is simply the fact that there is no one perfect software solution for every segment of our industry, because we are a very segmented industry with the seed stock, the true cow-calf producer, the stocker producer, the feed yard producer, ultimately even like down to the really niche businesses like the complete grass-fed supply chains. Each one of them has very different management techniques that need to be factored in. And we just don't simply have the right software for each one in one offering. So it means that the producer can be simultaneously sharing our data with 3 different platforms at once. They can be working with RangeView by Envu to be doing truly innovative range management, even looking at biomass estimation and the disappearance per animal that can be assigned to that. And they can simultaneously be sharing that data into a breed association reference so that they can be looking at fertility by environment expression of these animals, because with calving and with estrus, you get return to cyclicity, which is the most important fertility metric we can be looking at. And now we can look at it across the continent without any limitation of how do we take that data and leverage it, because it's truly allowing it to be usable in all the formats it needs to be usable in.
Mm-hmm. As you talk about the usability of that, then we start looking at, okay, as a rancher, okay, this is an investment. And with anything, we want an ROI on our investment in that. So justifying that, and I know as you've already talked about some of those things initially of what the Gen 6 technology has with the device there. We've got everything from, as you were talking about, fertility, understanding that. And really when it gets down to that, walk us through the different aspects of the ROI that we're looking at this beyond just the tracking. What else?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest piece that producers can leverage is understanding the feed efficiency and selecting for animals that do a better job of partitioning feed into our economically relevant output. Our average cow-calf producer has between 5 and 15% of their herd that eat for 2 to 3 and wean for 1. Those cows never make sense, but up until today, other than being the big, fleshy, pretty one that we like to look at, we probably never knew that she was eating 45 pounds to wean the same 700-pound calf that one that eats 20 pounds. And the other big piece that's coming out, and I'll let the researchers continue to bring this to you, but we've got one looking at a correlation of cow body weight to grazing minutes and the byproduct of rumination, which is cow heat. And they will show you that cow weight is a terrible predictor of intake. In fact, it's really lowly correlated to weight alone. We have 1,100-pound cows in every grazing system that eat as much as a 1,400-pound cow. An 1,100-pound cow can never wean as big a calf as a 1,400-pound cow. So truly starting to select for animals that do a better job of leveraging size and intake to my specific environment. The other thing we both know is that the same cow with the same intake in your part of the world than my part of the world don't do the same thing. I mean, I grew up raising cows that had to eat sagebrush for 90% of their meals. They eat very differently than a cow in South Texas that's got belly deep Bermuda grass. But understanding that efficiency and how does that individual animal partition the available energy they have to weaned calf or retained heifer or anything else we're building truly allows us to make unit economic decisions of cow-calf production. And that's really what we're opening up is unit economic decision making in the cow-calf and seed stock space. So we really want to make sure to open that to every platform that helps those producers make those decisions. You and I both know there's a dozen within those same 10 ranchers that are coming in that are getting utilized. Some of them use 2 different platforms because they have 2 different breeds in their seed stock. Some of them don't have a computer at all, and we're going to have to help them to go into that phase. But because the devices can be scaled up really easily and they don't have to use every animal every day and they're completely redeployable, it allows the producer to become comfortable with the concept before they have to jump headfirst into doing every animal in their system. It also allows it to be wildly more economically viable if you only want to tag 10 to 30% to start, or just your bulls and your heifers and your seed stock cows, because a lot of our operations have both commercial and seed stock. We can tag the seed stock cows because they are the genetic selection engine of everything. And we'll tag the problem cows in the commercial herd, only the ones that are always missing, never coming back from the Forest Service, or constantly missing a calf. I'm at least going to figure out what's going on and why.
Yeah, that's a good point. Back to your feed efficiency element. Boy, that information, that data there, that's going to revolutionize a lot of different aspects in our industry that you said there, and what we can do with that. As you think about that, I mean, it's always been a rule of thumb, and we've got even the standard animal unit index that we see that a lot of us use when we're doing our grazing charts and we're filling that out. It's like, okay, 1,000-pound cows equivalent to 14 equivalent to, 1 point, whatever that is. But if we've got cows out there that, if I've got 1,100-pound cow that's eating what a 1,500-pound cow's eating, she is no good.
100%. And you just have the ability to do the unit economic metric on her now. And that's why we're very careful to talk to producers about the fact that we have a complete break-even calculator that we'll sit down and work you through. But that requires you and I sitting down and going through the intricacies of your ranch specifically. Because if you have 300 cows and you're not willing to take it to 330, even if they take no more forage, then I'm not going to use that as a metric of how I make you money. You may only want to understand the benefit of having to either not synchronize females who are not going to react, or at least not waste semen and seeders and everything else on one that's too close to her next cycle or too far or not far enough from her last one. It depends on how you want to use the data. We're going to help you to leverage the data to make the best economic decision possible. But that's a different conversation for every ranch. It's not my job to sit here and tell you I can run your ranch better. I can't. You guys have decades to centuries of knowledge of how to run these ranches better than our team could ever have. We just have new data that allows you to leverage that. So it's a partnership between the producer and us to figure out the right ways to make you money. That may be a 5x return on your money. It may be a 50x return on your money, depending on how inefficient or how open you are to changing your management strategies. A lot of producers leave a tremendous amount of profit in the pasture, but because of those same assumptions we were already talking about, we've been doing the best we thought was possible.
Yeah.
We just have to change what that looks like now that better data is available.
Yeah. Okay, Shane, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, I want to go down that road a little bit further in terms of feed efficiency, because there's things that it can also help when it comes to grazing management. And I want to talk about that when we come back.
A high-functioning rumen drives herd performance, gut health, and profitability. Levucel SC by Lalaman Animal Nutrition is the only natural occurring rumen-specific active dry yeast probiotic selected to optimize rumen function, boost fiber digestion, and help you get more out of your forage and feed. No matter how you supplement your herd, including Levucel SC can help your cows do more on what they already have. Discover the right formulation for your herd at chooselevucelsc.com.
Shane, as you talk about the feed efficiency aspect, let's take it down a road a little bit further. As you talked about leaving, potentially, you're either leaving money in the pasture or taking too much out of the pasture. There's, in some ways with that. But I think one of the things, the ability to then know the herd predictability of when we need to be moving or where they're still doing and functioning efficiently from a feed intake standpoint is going to come in conjunction with that, isn't it?
100%. It's why all of our software partners are strongly encouraged to build a grazing heat map, because you're going to be generating grazing minutes based upon each animal's unique movement, and then be able to show that on an active map. And so Rangeview is a great example. One, it's in our backyard right here in northern Colorado / Wyoming area and being designed there. But the truth is it actually is giving a completely functioning heat map of grazing behaviors that can be overlaid with biomass estimation. So it's truly saying you have X amount of forage, you want to take Y amount of forage on every piece of this, and you can make better decisions in your rotation and know exactly when to move animals. It might be 5 days sooner than we thought. It might be 15 days later than we thought because we got a good rain and the forage is holding. But it allows that to be completely autonomous to how we want the system to work together to make those better decisions. And it's incredibly economically efficient to do so. You can be taking, and we can show you the models, you can be taking and paying upwards of $5 a cow a month in software cost alone to be doing these things, which that system would not cost you that. And you can be returning a 10 to 15x return on just doing a better job of rotationally grazing animals. Because when you want to leave exactly 60% in some areas, because you're trying to do either forage benefits or trying to repair an ecosystem that you may have damaged in the past, knowing exactly where that 60% point is means that you, again, move the animals at the right moment, and that regrowth comes way faster than we would have thought. So just balancing that, yes, I want to take exactly 60% or 40% in this area, and I want to maintain those levels, allows us to do such a better job. And that alone will increase stocking rate efficiency, because you'll be amazed how much better you can do of just managing those rotations and optimizing your forage.
Mm-hmm. I want to go down another road here, and that is when we start talking about the ability to see and know what's going on with these cattle from a remote location is also, and this is a given, I mean, how are they doing physically? The ability to manage that issues, the health issues that they're having. I mean, that's a given that is going to be a part of this. That's very helpful.
100%. And it's why we've built embedded dashboards that go into every one of the softwares that are doing that analysis for you as the producer. I always use my dad as an example in this conversation. My dad's an early 70s rancher from Western Colorado. And if I can't make him care about what he sees in the first 5 minutes, he's going to turn his computer back off and not pay attention. So that dashboard is allowing him to see the animals whose 7-day intake is 10% down over the last 7 days or 10% up. And then the whole group's rolling 7-day, 30-day, and 60-day average. Now, the 60-day one's completely customizable. You can make it 60, 120, whatever you want that to be. But it's allowing you to see a snapshot of, are my animals working harder for their intake or not working as hard for their intake? Who's doing a better and worse job in the specific environment we're in? Because the other thing you will learn is that you have cows that are more efficient from breeding to weaning as they are from weaning to calving. And you also have females whose preferential intake is going to make you pull your hair out. You'll have one cow that on one side, because the cows choose to go whatever direction they choose, and we never understand why. You'll have one cow that eats 40 pounds of intake on one side of the pasture and 5 pounds the next day on the next. Cow intake is not a linear progression like we think about in the feedlot business. So we need to look at it on a rolling basis. It needs to be that 7, 14, or customizable window. Because if you look at daily intake patterns, you really are going to pull your hair out, because cows and their preferential behaviors based upon how they choose certain forages, it's the same way we see them. We'll have plants that bloom once every 3 years, and the old cows will increase their activity 5x to go pull those certain plants out of the ground in a certain season, because they really like the way they taste. And they remember that from 3 years ago when they were heifer calves. They're super fascinating animals. And because they have all these intrinsic ability to maximize the land as we know it, we need to make sure to work with those abilities. It's one of the big pieces of forcing animals into a polygon against their will. Yeah, we can absolutely make them go somewhere and we can make them graze somewhere, but that doesn't mean we can make them perform if we force them to eat somewhere they don't necessarily want to. We need to be understanding why the animals interact with their environment in the way they do before we go changing behaviors only. If cow efficiency is our main metric of what we want to get from the operation and not just clearing the forage, then we need to really pay attention to why cows eat what they eat when they eat it.
Yeah, that's a good point on that. Okay, Shane, as we kind of wrap up here, we've talked about some great assets and great return on investments that we can do with the technology. But I think at the end of the first thing that probably going to come up to you and say, will it work in my area?
Yeah, that's the beauty, is that because they're low orbit satellite driven, you can put these tags in any animal, haul them anywhere, and they'll immediately start working. And they will transmit data every 6 hours like clockwork to tell you the animal's efficiency and their location. Because at the end of the day, if we have animals getting chased by predators or thieves or anything else we're worried about, knowing where they are, what they're doing, and having predictive models built into the device that says, hey, I've got no activity on these. That either means I've got a dead animal attached to it, or one of the animals has pulled it out, which happens less than 5% of the time. But it also means you don't lose your device. You can have them on 60,000 acres of Forest Service. It's going to give you its exact known GPS location. You put that in your Onyx and ride right to it and pick it up. Yeah, you had to go get the device, but it's a heck of a lot better than losing it. And the same thing with the high activity alerts. Those are made to trigger when an animal is greatly exceeding its rolling 7-day average. All of our devices are learning animals on a rolling 7-day basis. So if the animal is moving well beyond its rolling 7-day, that could be a fire chasing them, it could be a predator chasing them, a thief chasing them, it could be us gathering our cows and not turning off notifications. But it allows us to see, no, the animal is moving well beyond its expectation, and those are going to trigger every 10 minutes until the animal returns to a resting state. So if wolves are chasing your yearlings across central Wyoming and they run for half a mile before one gets killed, you're going to have a complete data stream of all the activities of that animal prior to being killed. And then it's going to tell you its last known location where it is dead. So you get that 60 minutes after it stops showing sign of life. And there's a complete data story that you and the Forest Service agree to. There's no questions asked. You're getting your money back because you walk right to the carcass 60 minutes after it's died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we know what animals have died. There's no more guesswork. It goes back to that conversation. Yeah, how do I make this pay? Well, it depends on how many unique ways you want to use it across a 3-year basis. But when they cost $40 a piece up front at this point and $5 per tag per month subscription, it's not hard to make this pay when your average cost of owning the device is about $66 a year. But you can spread that in a yearling sense across 12 to 15 sets in 3 years. I can pretty easily make that pay.
Yeah. All right, Shane, if they are interested in more information, the website, saristag.com, correct? Is there any other ways that for getting more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can look up Cirrus Tag on any of your major social media platforms. They always can find all of our team at any regional event that we'll be at. We will be in Lander, Wyoming with the National Grazing Land Coalition coming up at the end of June, as well as at Beef Improvement Federation in Boise in early June. So please come find us at any of these events we're at or look us up on our social media. There's also a comprehensive list of all of our software partners and all of our resale partners on our website. So it's super easy. It's not just information about the tag on the website. You'll find the closest place to buy them. You'll find all the software partners that you can compare and contrast. And there's constantly new ones coming on. We've been on 3 calls in the last 4 days with new software partners wanting to come on this journey. So it's continuing to expand new and innovative use case values for the producers.
Yeah. All right. Well, Shane, a lot of great information here. Some very useful technology that from a ranch perspective. And again, as you had talked about, giving different examples, doesn't matter if you're a commercial, purebred, registered outfit, a lot of applicable information that can be pulled out of that from a management usage standpoint. So thank you for sharing the information here with us today.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
You bet. And again, that was Shane White, National Sales Manager for Cirrus Tags, joining us here on the program. Again, their website, if you'd like more information, you can go to cirrustag.com. Well, we're going to take a break here, and when we come back, we're going to stay in the vein of technology in ranching and talk herd management software. And I think for a lot of us, one of the biggest things we all deal with is physically getting that information into a usable format. It's one of the biggest dilemmas we all deal with. We're going to talk about that coming up next. Agorocarbon works with farmers and ranchers to implement practices that promote soil health and add a new revenue stream. Now, when you work with Agorocarbon, you'll gain a partner that provides flexible payments and local agronomic expertise for your row crop or your range or even your pasture operations. Partnering with Agorocarbon is an investment in your land and your ranch's future. Get started today at agorocarbon.com.
Horn flies stressing your cattle? Make fly control one and done with Alticid IGR XRB. Alticid IGR XRB delivers season-long horn fly control from a single application bolus, providing up to 195 days of relief regardless of mineral consumption or location. It breaks the horn fly life cycle with no impact on beneficial insects, giving you flexible, consistent control. Learn more at cargillanimalnutrition.com/Alticid bolus.
And joining us now here on the Working Ranch Radio Show is Gabe Wright. He is the founder of Herd Advisor. Gabe, good to have you here on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Hey, Justin, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, we've already been on chatting with each other for about an hour or so as you were kind of working through Herd Advisor, the software and everything that it can do. And from a couple different stances, not only so that I was educated in our conversation that we're going to have here today and share with folks listening, but also even as a rancher myself, we're running 400 head of cow-calf pairs. We got about 200 head of yearlings, and how do we, manage that data? I want to get back into originally what started your quest in this. And for so many of us, we know that data is important, but getting that data into a usable format, that's kind of been the challenge, hasn't it?
It certainly was for me. I think there are 2 things that we're really trying to accomplish here. One is records you'll keep, so having data that you'll actually use. And the second is now, how do we make better decisions off those records? So to answer your question around the challenges, I know we're on radio, so no one can see me. I'm not young, and I've been doing this a long time. I grew up cow-calf operation, then finished college, started building my own herd and putting together my own places. My issue was just keeping records. So I started like everyone else with, pencil and paper, but then never had the right notebook with me and all that. Then moved on to cattle software, different software providers. But I found that I still had to write down, text myself, email myself, voice memo myself, and then hope that I would sit down at my desk and enter it in. And I found that I just really didn't do it. So what happened is when I went to make decisions, I didn't have the information I needed to make decisions. And so the first goal of Herd Advisor was let's just make it easy to get cattle records entered. Mm-hmm. So we have the data so that we can then circle back and make the decisions and answer the questions we have. And so, that's a little bit of the background of the heart of what we're endeavoring to accomplish here.
Well, Gabe, I can't help but think that one of the things that I've always heard, just kind of an example of where you're going at and where we're going to go at, and as we talk a little bit more about it, but from a personal management standpoint, is never keep 2 calendars, because you're always going to put, you're going to have one calendar that says something else and another calendar that says something else. So if we take that premise of personal time management and we apply it to herd management, that's kind of one of the things you're talking about too. And I think that's been my interest of learning a little bit more about what you've got going on here is the ability to get rid of a lot of, whether it's red books or whether it's this piece of paper or an Excel sheet or this or that, and be able to uniformly put stuff into one source easily. And of course, today with the ability to voice text or use your phones as that device. So walk us through that, because that's really what you're trying to help with this was eliminate all these multi-sources. You already talked about that, but also the ability that everybody pretty much anymore has a phone. So we can just say, pull it up, do this, and it does all of that.
That's right. Yeah. A couple things there. One is when I had the idea for this, I was sitting at my desk. It was a rainy day. I hate entering records, and that's not why I love cattle. The records is not it. So I was sitting here and I had my clipboard. I had a notebook out of my main truck. I had a notebook out of my tractor. I knew I had another notebook in a different tractor. And I had all these voice texts to myself and emails to myself. And it's just a disaster trying to keep up with it. Meanwhile, some of those records are like super old and stale. And I've already made decisions, and not always the right decision because I didn't have the record entered in. And it's the same thing. That's just me. I really run our operation alone here. Many ranchers have them, their spouse, their family, farm hands, et cetera. And these records, they start to really pile up. And so having one central source and then knowing what's entered and what isn't entered is really, really important. And so, the Herd Advisor app does that. You can have as many members, as many family members, as many ranch hands on the app, all referencing the same data. You can assign those by farm. So if you have a, farm hand at one farm, but not at another, you can, gate it where that farm hand only has access to the records on the farm that's relevant. One centralized location standpoint, that's amazing. The other piece is just from getting the record in. I tend to ride around in my truck, tractor, horse, whatever, just my phone in my pocket. And I don't ever pull my phone out. If it's okay, I'll do a quick demo of just what it sounds like. So I think you and I were talking earlier about a calving record. I'll try to replicate roughly what we did earlier. I don't remember exactly if I'll get close. And so my phone's in my pocket. Justin, you see my phone's locked because I'm showing it to you. But hey, Siri, cattle record with Herd Advisor.
Go ahead for Herd Advisor.
Cow number 2 had a calf this morning. It was a bull calf. We castrated it. It weighed 50 pounds.
Got it. I'll send this to Cattle Record Guide now.
Justin, that's as easy as it is. And so because it's that easy, I'll keep all my calving records like immediately instead of going out in the pasture. I'll even enter a calving record. I rarely work calves when they're born. I think I mentioned earlier, I've been run over a few too many times, and sometimes I'll still do it. I'll sit there on top of the calf and enter the record. I'll do it in my truck driving around. I'll keep calving records, movement records. I do treatment records. I do just notes and reminders. Like after a good snow here, we don't get a lot of snow. I'm in Northwest Arkansas, and if it snows on the ground for a week or two afterward, we'll have some limps that'll start. The cow stand in that wet snow, and I'll just, hey, remind me to check cow, whatever. She was limping. Let's, before I give her a treatment, remind me in 2 days to check her. So Justin, you can verify to the audience, we just got the email saying, hey, your records are in. And that record, that calving record we just entered, goes through a process of breaking down everything that was said. And in that one, we had 3 different things. We had a new animal. So we had a calf that was born. We had a castration event. It was a bull, and now it's a steer. And we also had a weight record. And all of those are recorded. And then they show up in the app and on the website. They show up where you can go in, you can edit them, you can delete that record, you can confirm that record. They auto-confirm after 30 days. I always suggest to people, make sure you look at it, the first little bit if you're using it, so you make sure that how you're talking and how the system's understanding is the same, but it's just that easy.
Yeah. That particular example there was on an animal by animal basis. And there's a lot that happens that way, especially when we're going through a couple cycles like I was sharing with you. For us, it'd be cow calving. The other time is a cow getting preg tested. And that's probably very similar to a lot of folks. So where you're dealing more with an individual basis. But at the same time, you also have bulk record entries as well. So because there's a lot of times you're doing even like I was sharing with you, we've branded a bunch of calves. We tagged a bunch of calves at one time. And that bulk entry is a way to get cows calved out, various things like that. But bulk entry is also there's also methods there as well, right?
For me, there are multiple ways to enter records. We try to make this really, really flexible and worked with a lot of ranchers on how do you actually work? How do you actually do things? Let's try to match how we actually do things. And so from a bulk perspective, there are three most common. There are a lot of records that from a bulk perspective, people still do by voice. Probably the most common one of those is pasture movement. I moved all the animals from the hay meadow over to the south pasture, and it'll pick it up and move all those animals. So by voice is still one way to do bulk records. Another is a lot of folks, they'll run a scale and the scale will output an Excel sheet, and there's a bulk import for your Excel sheet into the system. Then one of my favorites is when I work one farm or one ranch at a time, and I'll go in, there's a bulk edit. I grab all the animals and I can just quickly select, hey, for the calves, I gave them, if I did it like say a pour on warmer, I gave them 15 cc's of pour on. For the cows, I gave them 50 cc's. I can quickly grab groups. And so after I work a ranch, it typically takes me between 30 and 60 seconds. And I'll do that manually just at the computer on my phone. And it's less than a minute. I've got all the records, all those treatment records entered in. It's a really, I think, efficient system. That's what we've tried to build, is one that you'll actually keep the records for. I've had a lot of great intentions in the past of keeping great records, but they just didn't follow through. But this has become easy. This is easy enough for me. I really do have great records now.
Yeah. Gabe, I want to take a break here. And when we come back, I want to get a little deeper into kind of the why behind some of this, because I think that was what in our previous conversation that we had. At first, I was like, well, it's just a cattle management software. I get it. Yeah, we can see cows calving, treatments, weights, pasture moves, some financials that you got, deaths, culls, breeding, reminders, all those kinds of things. Yeah, I get that. We get that. But I think the other side of that is also, how do we then take that data and make decisions based upon that? I want to talk about that when we come back, okay?
Great. Yeah.
Your pasture is under attack. Yeah, horn flies. They're wreaking havoc on your herd, dealing damage to your cattle's weight, and in turn, that does affect your bottom line. That's why you need a solution in your arsenal that can withstand an attack. Alticid IGR is the first and proven feed-through that is battle-tested as an effective hornfly management product, delivering the defense needed to keep your herd productive and your profit strong. Win the battle for your cattle. Learn more at alticidIGR.com.
Imagine keeping your cattle exactly where you want them, while being able to tap into insights powered by a collar and an app. No Fence is the world's first virtual fencing system for grazing livestock. From the palm of your hand and delivered with GPS technology, you can set and move pasture boundaries, gain insight into grazing patterns, receive reduced animal activity alerts, and more. No wires, no posts, just empowered grazing that supports healthier land and your herd goals. 10,000 plus producers globally already trust No Fence. Explore the possibilities at nofence.com.
All right, Gabe, one of the things that I thought was interesting as we were talking, and I had mentioned to you, I said, well, I really don't use the financial components to my software that I'm using here. And it was interesting because some of the information that you were showing me, I think for folks that are doing sell-by marketing or potentially looking at LRPs or whether to wean, when to sell, all those kinds of things. That's some stuff that really for a lot of us in our minds, we're always wrestling with. I mean, even right now, we're spring of the year, but we're looking out, where's this market going? All those kinds of things. That's some of the data that I think from a decision standpoint, that's where you get the value out of the records that you're keeping.
That's right. Yeah, I think, records in and of themselves are not sexy and not fun at all. Mm-hmm. It is the ability to now either understand what's happening on the ground, like, hey, we just had a calf die, and then be able to see, oh, wait, she hasn't raised a good calf in a while. We need to cull that one. Like, you'd be able to see what's happening on the ground, or make decisions in a little bit more of a proactive way. And Justin, one of the reasons I created Herd Advisor, I remember when I finished college, I grew up on a small cow-calf. We were flashlight farmers, as we say. My parents worked off the farm, and I loved it. I loved cattle. I loved the lifestyle of having cows. And I finished college. I started trying to put together my own place and my own herd, and it's hard. Everything is expensive. And over the years, able to build up and have a nice herd. I've been very well blessed in that. But so much of the difference in being profitable or not is just having good records. When I started, I really cared about the eye candy value of the cow standing in the pasture next to the road. I thought, man, if people see that I've got great looking cows, that's really going to mean something. It meant nothing at the sale barn. And so then it's like, okay, how do I actually make money at this versus, people saying, hey, that's a good looking herd. And really records are the way to make money. And so the first thing is you have to have records to be able to make decisions off of it. And so where we focused our efforts first is how do we make it really, really, really easy and take the friction out of just entering records. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. I mean, we certainly reserve the right to get better every day. So we're always taking feedback and getting ideas on how to make things easier. The second piece, though, is making decisions. And one of my favorite examples is I would have one that I knew was a fall calver, didn't have a calf, and I'd think, you know what, that's a good cow. I'm going to roll her to the spring. I'd roll her to the spring. If she didn't have a calf in the spring, if I didn't have a good record, I would think, is that the one I rolled to the spring that missed in fall? Or, well, is that one the kids really like? If so, she probably wasn't the one I rolled, and I'll keep her. And that's a terrible way to make decisions. And so, some of the things, if you keep good records that we're able to do is identify when are your calving windows based off of either when was the last calf born? So if you leave your bulls in year round, was last calf born? Now we know when the next calf should be born. So we can open up and set reminders for you should start seeing calves hit the ground on these days for these cows. Or based on pasture movement. If you keep your pasture movement, you move a bull into a pasture. We know what cows are there. So we just open up a calving window for those cows where the bulls moved to the pasture. And then you have reminders. You should start seeing, and you can see exactly where your cows are in production cycle. You can click a button and see which ones have fallen out of their normal cycle and make a decision on do I cull those or not. If you keep up with your sale records, we have some indicators of these cows. They appear that they're selling the better end from a financial perspective. These are falling behind, and so you can make cull decisions there. It's really, really handy. The other piece that you mentioned, I was a little bit over a year ago now. I took a load of calves up to a sale barn, typically sell through Joplin. They've treated me great over the years. And even though I love them there, I'm pulling out. I dropped the calves off, and I was just about to pull out of the parking lot, and I asked myself the same two questions I've asked my entire life. Should I have sold them this week? Should I have sold them here?
Yeah.
I know, Just, you're probably like all of my buddies, however we sell, feed yard, sale barn, whatever. And we take a picture of the check stub and we send it around. Hey, look what happened. It seems like all too often I'm on the short end of that. I sold on the wrong week and or, whatever. So anyway, I thought, my previous roles, I'd started a software analytics company. And so I had some software experience, some analytics experience. I thought I could solve this for myself. So I built a market forecaster for myself that is super useful. It's part of the app today. And it breaks down all the barns that sell through and it report up to USDA. And it breaks down steers, heifers in 4 grade classes or medium, large 1, 2, 3, and an average of all grades. Breaks down by week. It really helps you understand a couple of things. Number one is which sale barn based off the data. And that is the sale barn data plus 285 other data points like weather predictions, national and local, all your other, feed grain inputs, import, export, quantities and prices, box feed production, all these inputs. Where do we think the price will be by sale barn over the next 4 weeks? So should I sell short term? And if so, when? So maybe I should wait 3 weeks and sell it barn X or wait 2 weeks and sell it barn Y. It'll also tell you should leave them on pasture or maybe you should go ahead and supplement them. And then the other thing I always wonder is should I keep them through to the next season? So it has a based off futures. Here's your 12 weeks prediction. And then, or should I keep them through a couple seasons? Here's your 20-week prediction. And what those per head, and it'll, take away the grain cost if it's supplement is the suggestion. So then you have some good information. So the example you and I were looking at a little bit ago, I think we're maybe a little bit heavier weight heifers, if I remember right. And based off of, futures and where things are today, if I held those 20 weeks, I could add $600 a head. Well, at that point, I know there's volatility in the market. I get that. But at $600 a head, I would go ahead and hold those. Matter of fact, I just weaned some off a couple weeks ago, and I am holding those based off that. But I might also call up my LRP guy and say, hey, listen, I'm a little nervous about the risk on this. Let me LRP and make sure, I can capture at least a good piece of that $600 a head and insure it and make sure I've got those covered. And so going back to the beginning, it's hard to make it. And all of us are fighting for dollars. All of us are fighting for a little bit more margin. And if you don't have good data and good ways to think about how do I normalize my income? How do I think about making a little more money on this? It's really, really difficult. We got a lot of intuition. A lot of the users I've talked to, maybe getting up closer to their twilight years and they're starting to think about generational planning. And I want to make sure I leave my ranch in good shape for my kids. I want to make sure they've got the records so they can take it over well and understand some of the decisions I made. Those are all really important things for, I think, all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Gabe, as we kind of wind down here a little bit, I want to go back to just the main point of this. And you were talking about just what we were talking about a bit ago, that's being able to take and utilize that data for the idea of we can be more profitable and find those margins that are making us profitable and be efficient with it. But it all goes back to the very first thing. If you don't get the data entered, there's nothing you can do with it. And I think that's one of the things that we look at is, again, not keeping 2 calendars, not keeping 5 notebooks and maybe how many written tag numbers on your glove,
Right.
Like, and don't forget this kind of where we're going off of memory. And I think the ability that we can just have what most of us have with us and to be able to put that data in right then and there, have it transfer and get into the software is really key to not being redundant. And some of the time consuming parts is multiple times we've got to enter the same data. If we can reduce that, and it can be as simple as somebody wants. I mean, if we're just wanting cabin records, the basics, that's fine. If you want to take that data and use it later, you can. That's what this is getting back to, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly. It's so funny you mention that. I've got a user who I was talking to, it's been a few months ago, but he was telling me that he keeps better records in the winter than in the summer, because in the summer he sweats the ink off his hand. And I thought that was pretty funny. But that's exactly it, is having the information, entering it, knowing it's done. Again, I just ride around like in my truck, my phone in the console, in my pocket, and I keep records, and it's done. One point is it is built offline first. And though Siri, Google Gemini doesn't work offline, you can still do voice records. You have to open the app, but you can hit a button, it'll record your voice record, and it'll work offline. When you come back online, it all syncs. It's built offline first. So many of us don't have great coverage on a ranch. It is really built for how we work as ranchers, trying to keep up with the herd, and just trying to make it easy. Have the records. There's very little excuse. Trying to make it really easy. And we tell our users all the time, if you have ideas on how to make it easier, more useful, that's our desire, is to do exactly that.
Yeah. Yeah. Website and information, herdadvisor.com, of course, is the website. What more can you tell us as far as folks to get a hold of you? And really, I mean, you and I were on the phone for about an hour as you were kind of working through, kind of explaining to me what all it does. And we've just scratched the surface of some of it. And really, people do need to just get on, go through a trial, but more information about getting a hold of you guys.
Yeah, herdadvisor.com, as you said, is the place to kind of check some things out. We're terrible marketers. And so we do have a 14-day free trial. And so sign up on the website to get that 14-day free trial. If you go to the App Store, it'll charge you immediately. So sign up on the website, then download the app and sign in through the app, and it'll have all access. Additionally, Gabe at herdadvisor.com, GABE at herdadvisor.com. Email, happy to do demos. One of us here will do a demo. We love doing demos. There's a lot of depth in Herd Advisor. We're just terrible marketers and getting some of that information out, as well as if you need references on other folks that use it, that kind of thing. We're happy to connect dots there. But I think it's a pretty robust system and easy to use. We're really, really proud of it. But again, reach out anytime with questions or comments or demo. Happy to take all those.
You bet. One quick question I'm just going to ask you here is, I've been doing this with some of our other guests, a book, podcast that you listen to from a professional standpoint as a rancher yourself. I know you're also an entrepreneur, but just anything that you recommend for folks to listen to from a professional improvement standpoint.
Yeah, sure. I'm a voracious intaker of information. I'm a big reader, so this could go on for days, but let me give you a couple that I've just recommended. The Acquired podcast. I'm always interested in how companies start and some of the transformation. As a rancher, we have businesses. How do you grow that business, get creative, all that? The Acquired podcast, they just profile a different company every couple of weeks. It comes out. I really like that podcast. It's a really good one. The book I just recommended this morning is The Anxious Generation. It's probably 2, 3, 4 years old, but certainly something that, it's so sad to me. You can't go out to dinner on a Friday, Saturday night and know that social media has killed our ability to be social, where you got all these tables of people sitting together and everyone's on their phone. I'll get a little preachy here for a second, but that book kind of breaks some of that down, and it's really good from that standpoint. And it's one of the things I worry about, like in my business, that if social media has taught us how not to be social, will artificial intelligence teach us how not to be intelligent? Mm-hmm. Something that's constantly on my mind, especially for my kids. And we have some kind of rules and principles here at our house. And I think there are books like that that help frame some of that up, because part of the ranching lifestyle is just being able to pull into your neighbor's place and sit on the porch for a little bit and talk, or, sit down at the feed store and have conversations with each other about what's going on and what are you seeing and do you need help or do you need to borrow a whatever, I'm afraid we're starting to see some of that social connection tear apart, and I hate that.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. Well, Gabe, great conversation. As I had said a moment ago, we just kind of scratched the surface a little bit, but I hope it's enough information to make people inquisitive enough to maybe reach out to you guys, and hope to catch up with you down the road.
Likewise, Justin. Thank you.
All right. And again, that was Gabe White, founder of Herd Advisor. Again, the website, if you'd like more information, you can go to it at herdadvisor.com. Well, stay with us. Coming up next, meteorologist Don Day steps in with a look at our long-range weather.
Fascinated by our wild weather? Now you can learn, appreciate, and understand the weather in your own backyard with the new Tropo Rain Gauge. Having achieved the highest rating of any product reviewed by the WeatherStationExperts.com, the Tropo boasts rugged durability, impeccable accuracy, and precision to the 100th of an inch. Visit MeasureRain.com to order a Tropo today and use code RAINDAY. That's RAINDAY for free shipping and 10% off. Go to MeasureRain.com.
Today's long-range weather brought to you by long-range epinephrine with 150 days of parasite protection in just one single dose. To find out more, go to their website at longrangedewormer.com. And joining us now with a look at our long-range weather is meteorologist Don Day. And Don, I kind of feel like a little bit of a broken record because every week we've been getting on here and we've been talking about really the strangeness of the weather. So you had mentioned before we started here today that once we kind of get through this, we could start to see more of a summer pattern. But I think one of the concerns still is that with that summer pattern, does that mean less moisture that could be coming? Because we still have a pretty good chunk of the country that is in drought type situations. And while there has been some recent moisture, definitely not enough to pull out of a drought.
No, definitely not. And I'd have to say overall, the spring has been more disappointing than good in terms of a lot of parts of the central and west central and far western areas of the United States, while spring has been quite good for parts of the south and the southeast with a lot of drought relief there. Your question is a good one. I mean, if we're getting out of spring and going into a summer pattern, is that going to turn off any opportunities for precipitation? But one of the things that we're looking at is it's a real contrast. We've got this colder than average pattern across Canada and the northern U.S. Here we are going into the third week of June. At the same time, the El Nino continues to get stronger and stronger. We're seeing tropical storms form in the Pacific. So we're seeing things, quote, heating up with the El Nino. But the jet stream coming out of Canada is keeping any El Nino impacts really out of the lower 48 for now. What we do see developing, though, at the end of the month is maybe a relaxing of that jet stream in the north, which will allow some of that subtropical moisture that El Nino can feed the U.S. having more opportunities to move north. And I think that is something as we get to the last days of June into early July will bring some hope to the very dry areas. Also, parts of the desert Southwest will start to get back into the rain. That would include places like Arizona, Utah, and New Mexico, getting back into some better chances of moisture. When you get into summer, how far north that moisture gets really dictates in terms of who gets the most benefit. And that's just something we're going to have to monitor.
All right, Don, well, good to visit with you. And we'll take a break off this next week and we'll catch up with you after that.
See you then.
And again, that was meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-range weather. If you want to tune in each and every morning to his daily video podcast, you can head to his website at dayweather.com. And the Working Ranch Radio Show is a production of Working Ranch Magazine, branded #1 by America's Ranchers. Thanks for joining us. I'm Justin Mills. And until next time, keep your chin down and your mind in the middle. So long.